I'm Wallace. Anytime I am called upon, I will fight for Kaylin's honor.
Today we're talking about Wallace, who is our first rare Grail unit in over 2 months. That's a sad thing to say. Thankfully, Wallace has a few interesting things to talk about, although he's going to be a fairly standard Lance Armor unit. Our last rare Grail Lance Armor was 3 years ago, so Wallace can fill in that gap if you didn't like the recent 3 to 4 star demote options. For stats, Wallace will have 51 HP, 49 attack, 28 speed, 48 defense, and 35 res. Not really min-maxed for low speed, but 28 base speed can now be a plus for those that want to use patience. Wallace will have good physical bulk and a great attack stat. His 35 res isn't that high, but it's fine for taking a glancing blow. Since Wallace has a 211 BST, it is very important to know that giving him trait fruits for a super boon will get him to the next arena scoring bin. You will have a choice between HP, attack, or speed. If you do this, then Wallace will match Raphael as the current highest scoring arena projects among the free-to-play friendly units. For his inheritable weapon, Wallace has the Forged Lance Plus. 14 might, and at start of either phase, grants plus 6 attack and defense to allies within 3 spaces for 1 turn. This weapon grants plus 5 stats in combat. It then deals true damage equal to X and reduces damage equal to half that amount. X is going to be equal to the highest total field buffing amount on the user or allies within 3 spaces. Since our Tempest Trials units got Thanos, the free-to-play inheritable weapon situations has not been looking great for the future. Forged Lance Plus is thankfully a step in the right direction. This weapon is actually using the same effect as Summer Balthus' Osseous Trident Plus. However, Forged Lance is actually a buffed up version. Osseous Trident granted plus 5 stats, had Treachery true damage, and you got half the amount of true damage as flat DR. Well, Forged Lance now grants plus 6 attack and defense as field buffs to feed its own effect. In addition, you may have noticed that the activation conditions of the in-combat effects are gone like the modern 10th gen weapons. Also, the range to borrow field buffs from your allies is now 3 spaces instead of 2, and the attack and defense field buff effect has a 3 space range as well. Overall, while it's not a new weapon type with the Osseous Trident effect, at the very least they did add to it. I would love if they did this to the weapons they gave to the demo units because refreshing old weapon effects is kinda just lame. Since Forged Lance provides its own attack and speed field buffs, Wallace will end up getting 12 true damage and 6 flat DR. He'll want to get speed and res field buffs, but it's actually kinda tough to get those on armors, so maybe bring a friend. Now for other skills in his base kit, Wallace has Ignis for his high defense. He also has Earth Boost, which I would not recommend over other defense boosting budget skills. They just aren't really worth using until they're tier 4 versions. Now, for his last skill, Wallace has Wily Fighter 3. If above 25% HP and the foe initiates combat, you get a free follow-up attack and neutralize the foe's field buffs. Wily Fighter is fine for a quick repose armor skill, and importantly, Wallace is the first free-to-play source of this skill. Wily Fighter is incredibly hard to get, and the tier 4 is on units like Attuned Hector, so Wallace is a great Grail unit. Forged Lance is decent as well, so Wallace has some nice fodder overall. Now if you either merge Wallace up, then the Neutral Nature will give him plus 1 HP, attack, and defense. If you want to get into the next arena scoring bin, then Wallace does need a super boon via trait fruits. You can pick between HP, attack, or speed. For free-to-play Lance armor comparisons, we don't have too many options, so Wallace is a nice modern pick. Funnily, all the free-to-play Lance armors kinda hover around the low to mid 30s speed, so everyone's kinda in a similar spot here. With Dragon Flowers, Fireguard, and Cervantes aren't that different from Wallace if you want great HP, attack, and defense. Wallace is more min-maxed if you don't care about speed. As for Valentine's Eliwood, he's the fastest option here, but that comes at the cost of his defense and res, which aren't that great for an armor unit. When it comes to demotes, Oswin and Boars are the most recently released Lance armors. Like the Grail options, they too are pretty similar to Wallace, just with higher speed instead of res. When you go further down the list, the other armors again congregate around 30 speed. Benny has great defensive stats, but his attack takes a huge hit. If you have her Resplendent outfit, Effie will get the extra stats to catch up in BST. She has almost 60 HP to balance out her lower defense and res, while her attack and speed are pretty much in line with Wallace's. In general, there's not really a min-maxed low-speed tank, and there hasn't been any modern units with unique weapons, so the Lance Armor class is fairly open in terms of free-to-play competition. With that being said, if you just want a unique, non-5-star blue armor unit, there is Melgrima from last year. He's a low-speed armored dragon demote. Good luck getting the merges though. When it comes to playstyle, armors are generally enemy phasing, and Wallace is fine with that. Wily Fighter gives him a follow-up attack and neutralizes field buffs. Meanwhile, Wallace wants to stack field buffs himself to empower Forged Lance. The weapon comes with attack and defense field buffs for the team, but it's tougher to get speed and res buffs consistently. Wallace could buff allies with typical hones or fortifies or tactic buffs, and then borrow them back, but it'd be nice to get the buffs on Wallace himself anyway. One way to do this is with wave buffs, but unless you run odd and even wave, then they only work every other turn. Might be easier to just get some friends, because a full +6 field buff would give 24 true damage and 12 flat DR. Forged Lance would absolutely love Eichlingir's +3 field buff buffing gimmick. Now for other skills, besides Earth Boost, you can use attack and defense Form or Bond, or perhaps Close Defense. You could use a Prime skill, but Forged Lance doesn't actually give a status. Now for B skills, I would just keep Wily Fighter. If you want the debuff neutralization of Slick Fighter, you could use the Sacred Seal version, or you can get Special Fighter's cooldown plus Guard. It's going to be kind of tough to proc Bonfire or Ignis without extra cooldown. As for something slightly different, you can get Assault Troop from Raphael for charge movement. Pair that with Bold Fighter for a player phase follow-up and cooldown. You can always run the classic Bold Fighter plus Wily Fighter for follow-ups on both phases. For premium builds, it's still not easy to find self-buffing armor skills, so if you keep Forged Lance, then just bring speed and res buffing friends. There have been some nice recent developments if you're just looking for a cheaper build. If you got the Valentine's Ephraim Ephemera comic manual from last month, then he can pass on Armored Blaze, Earthfire Boost, and Attack and Defense Near Save 3. In the new Divine Code 7 shop, you can get Holland Scrimmier in the first line. He has Wily Fighter 4 and Attack and Defense 4 save. It's not crazy, but those two will give Wallace a very simple enemy phase build with slightly more modern skills. The main issue with Armored Blaze is that its %DR won't activate unless the foe uses a special. Even if you use Counter Fighter, that's not enough cooldown to ready Armored Blaze because we lack Slaying. Now if you want guaranteed % damage reduction, you can use the new Armored Flare, Arch Rival, or Comet. Armored Flare activates its 40% DR effect 2 times, so it can block the first 2 Brave hits, or the first basic attack and a follow-up. Armored Flare also stacks great talent attack and defense, and with Forged Lance it's already buffing those stats, so it's a nice physical damage synergy. If you use Armored Flare, you can also upgrade to Briar's save skills, and I would find a cooldown perk like Special Fighter. In general, Forged Lance will work with any typical savior builds, true damage and flat DR to stack with the tier 4 fighter skills, and then calming those with a % DR special of your choice. For other upgrades, you could use Deluvio Boost, and you could run Counter or Assault Fighter if you want in the B slot. You can also regain Wily or Slick Fighter's effects as their Sacred Seals. Pair Up is another general option for the B skill, plus it's funny for any speed focused builds. On that topic, Wallace can use Johanna Lance Plus. Even though it buffs attack and speed and gives dodge, it also gives debuff neutralization, 7 flat DR, and total damage reflection. You can run that with Wily Fighter and utilize the dodge % DR against actually slower tanks. People do just run it for the damage reflection alone, cause it's just that powerful of an effect. Besides just tanking with Savior, Wallace can go aggressive with Strat Assault. 3 space warp movement, plus it gives allies true charge. Strat Assault can enable player phase builds, and you can pair this with Strat Flame for lots of attack and defense, 5 true damage and flat DR, and breath type cooldown. For the full Emblem Edelgard build, you can then toss in Patience. Wallace will get a guaranteed second hit, and this can be used to trigger those Arch Rival, Comet, or Armored Flare specials. While you can use Patience for savior builds, I think the funniest way to use it is initiating with Hardy Bearing. That will turn off Patience's reverse advantage effect, so Wallace attacks first, the enemy counters back, and then Wallace guarantees a follow. Strat Flame is providing extra cooldown for every action, and you can get more cooldown with Arcane Crimson, or you can abuse Johanna Lance's damage reflection. For other skills, Wallace can get Distant Counter Echo from Attuned Hector if you're going for that Wily Fighter 4 anyway. Nearest Ash has Distant Reversal, which is just DC with bonus defense. Wallace can use Breath of Life skills, or something like Shield Fighter if you want. So, should you 5-star Wallace? Like Raphael, Wallace will have the highest BST for arena scoring, excluding any unique skills. Just be sure to grab one of his super boons. Stat-wise, Wallace is slightly more min-max, but as we saw, almost all the Lance armors are kinda in the same speed tiers. He's not majorly different, but he's the only Gen 10 option for now. In terms of skills, Wallace brings some surprises with the technically new Forged Lance Plus and his the very rare Wily Fighter 3. Both are nice additions to the free-to-play pool. Like usual, Wallace will want a new set of skills, but there are some recent Divine Code common manuals that can set Wallace up with a slightly more premium build. Armors have many ways to build up for Savior, and if you're feeling more spicy, you can instead go the Strat Assault route or abuse Patience. In conclusion, Wallace is alright. I'm just happy to get any kind of heroic grail unit because it's not looking like we're gonna get that many more moving forward. Thank you for watching Kobe Wallace's Grand Hero Battle map, and I will see you in the next video.